Welcome, Kimya. You may start now. Thank you.
Uh, Hi, okay. So thank you again, Saurabh, for organizing this, and I'm really excited to do this. Though I must say, like, I've never done anything, a presentation, like a webinar online. So it's kind of really odd to like not have to see people's faces, but just like stare into the computer. But I guess we'll do questions and things after the talk, so there'll be some human interaction then. So my name is Kimya Gandhi, as Saurabh said, and I'm a typeface designer. I design in the Devanagari script, which very commonly I hear people saying, "Oh, do you design in Hindi or English?" So the script that we design in is called Devanagari, and Hindi is the language that is uh, used by Devanagari. Saurabh mentioned, I am a partner at the type foundry Mota Italic. And here we design Devanagari and Latin typefaces with my partner and husband, Rob Keller. Uh, I live and work from Mumbai, and I think, sorry, uh, I'll, why is the video not working? Oh, there. Okay, yeah. So, while some cliches are really true about Mumbai being crowded and hustly and bustly, there's also, I feel Mumbai is a city of contrasts, and there's like, this is just a few kilometers away from all that like crowd and crazy madness. I think this contrast kind of reflects in a lot of aspects of the city itself, be it the visual culture or the demographic of the city. Uh, Speaking of which, this is a picture I clicked a few months back, which is the metro construction that is happening in Mumbai right now. And it's quite fascinating to me that this kind of high tech new train line has been set up. And when the construction is happening, this is all the barricading that goes along. I guess, like, people from Mumbai, you've seen this. But what's interesting is that this is all hand painted. And I feel like, this contrast that I said, which exists in the city, is also like in the visual landscape of it. So here, you have this, and this you see in a lot of cases, I think. Um, I'm saying a little bit about this because it's important for me to establish the context from where I'm designing. So in India, as we know, we live in so many cultures, so many things coexist, and there's this continuity of thought, philosophy, and ways of life. Just to give you an example, this is something that I saw on an app store, which I thought was a perfect example of how different centuries are kind of coexisting and like adapting to newer technology. So I guess like this is basically an app that is like a Jap Mala app. So, like you've probably seen your grandmothers who use this to like pray. And this is like an app. So you like touch on every bead and then that's how you count now. So I think that's quite interesting how that like actual physical experience has like translated into an app now. Uh, in terms of typography and letters, like I think most of us in India live in a very multilingual and multi-script environment where we all speak at least two or three languages depending on which state we live in, and according to our parents and grandparents. So I think it's also it's quite unique that this kind of living and this kind of a situation exists. Speaking of numbers, like in India, we have 13 official scripts, sort of, the 28 languages that are in the constitution, but around 780 living languages. Living languages means that there are like living speakers of those many languages in India. And around, like, according to a survey that was conducted a couple years ago, like 220 languages have disappeared in the last 50 years. That is that the people who were speaking slowly started using other languages from the state, maybe, and then their community started getting smaller and smaller. Just to give you a quick overview of the kind of scripts and that we see in India. So you maybe, depending on where you are from, you probably are familiar with these scripts. So there's Assamese, Devanagari, Gujarati, Gurmukhi, Kannada, Latin, Malayalam, Odia, Olchiki, Mithime, Tamil, Telugu, Urdu. And if we try to briefly classify them, you can try and like classify them as like North Indian and South Indian scripts. You can see certain similarities of form that kind of appear in these brief categorizations. I'm not going to go into like a history of letters or something, but again, to establish a context from where we are from, I thought it would be nice to just, and since we're all just sitting at home and not traveling, I thought it would be maybe fun to just see all these different scripts and in different forms. Starting off with Devanagari. This is just like it's not a like chronological history presentation, but it's just some slides that I thought looked and like could explain the evolution of letters in India as well. So this is a manuscript in the Jaini style, and you can kind of still recognize some letters, the Devanagari letters in this. So this is still like you can still read it, the script. This is a manuscript in Gurmukhi from Amritsar. And again, you can see that there is, in the North Indians, you can see certain similarities of them having these vertical strokes. The top line, which is called a Shirorekha. So in most of the North Indian scripts, you'll see more vertical, horizontal strokes of these kind. This is a Tamil manuscript, which is, if you have seen these ever, these are palm leaf manuscripts. So what happens is that there are these like sections of the palm leaf that are there, and the way they are inscribed is that there's this tool called a stylus, and these letters are kind of etched on top of this palm leaf, and then ink is rubbed on them. The reason why I'm showing this is also to understand like why certain letter forms have certain characters. So the South Indian scripts, if you see, have more circular forms, and the reason why that could be because of these palm leaf manuscripts. So if you try to make like straight lines on these, you can kind of see that the grain of the palm leaf is also horizontal. So if you made too many horizontal strokes, then that could lead the palm leaf to break. So that is probably why like the forms are evolved into more circular shapes. Also, to like skip a lot ahead into like printing, and printing was mostly brought into India by missionaries and during the colonization times, when it was basically used to print a lot of religious material, which again, like for a lot of bilingual and vernacular printing was also around this time. So you can see this is like a really old Gospel of John from 1884, which is in Kannada and Latin. This is also some early printing by letterpress time. I'm not going to go into details about explaining each of these. If you are free to like look up these processes and ideas if you feel interested in finding out more about these. So this is early printing, how I'll slightly explain like the type foundries then had these things called metal type, and they would print specimens, which are basically showing what kind of fonts they had. And this is an example of a specimen book. So what a website does now is basically what these specimen books did, is like show off the collection of typefaces that a particular foundry had. Speaking of print, I wanted to show this very peculiar example of this newspaper called the Musalman from Chennai. I'm not sure if many of you are aware of this, but this is a newspaper that gets handwritten every day, even now. And there's basically a group of calligrapher artists who sit and like handwrite the whole newspaper, and there's the masthead and stuff is obviously printed, but the entire other newspaper gets handwritten and then scanned and then circulated, which I think is quite fascinating. So to leave print and come into like the more visual surroundings of us, where we see different kinds of store signs, signages, everything. and which to me are like the most amazing archive of letter forms that we can see around us. So every time I'm traveling, I make sure that I take pictures of all these signs of stores that I see. This one in particular I really like. It's this really cool modular Devanagari sign from Kolhapur. This is a store sign from Ahmedabad. This is quite a amazingly done and painted Gujarati store sign. It also has Arabic on top, by the way, which is cool. Coming to Bengali, this is Bengali is one of the most beautiful scripts from India, personally, to me. This one is a very peculiar example again, which is like a more cursive, fluid looking Bengali, which like until my trip to Calcutta, I had not really seen many examples of this style of Bengali. So I think it's quite nice too. Another aspect of like traveling is that you figure out these peculiar things from particular cities, which are so this one from Calcutta is like these state transport buses, which each bus is painted differently and kind of says where the destination and where it goes from, which again is so cool, I feel. And these kind of peculiar things are from different states, and you can see them quite often if you travel around it. You can see that certain scripts have a way, like certain media that are used quite largely. This I thought was again, this is an example of book cover designed by Satyajit Ray. It's a lesser known fact that he was also a very prolific graphic designer and lettering artist, I would say. He used to design his own movie posters and book covers a lot. And there is actually a really nice book on his graphic works as well. So yeah, this is again like how the script, this is the same script but looks so different. And yeah, this is an example of Gurumukhi from the Golden Temple. So you can see that there is some similarity kind of happening in the North Indian scripts as with respect to their forms. Then moving down to more South Indian scripts, you see again letters in our environment, these kind of political announcements. I think we've all seen them, but what is cool is that they use these political party colors in the lettering. So when you're even driving by, you have a quick glance and then you can kind of tell which party is propagating this message. Again, more store signs. This one is from Chennai again. And I think it's also a big shout out to all these lettering painters in all of India who do such a brilliant job of just combining all these various styles and typeface, like, lettering styles to create amazing looking signages. And yeah, I think like if you try to do this on Illustrator or something, it would be a total nightmare. But I think like just the way they visually make these things look nice is quite an institution in itself. I think it's really something that you can look into. This is again talking of city-specific things. This is from Bangalore. This is a movie premiere banner. Obviously, they take their movies quite seriously, I guess. These are some book cover designs in Malayalam. And sometimes it so happens that there is the need to have multilingual graphic design. So a lot of early examples of movie posters would do this. Even title credits, if you see in old Hindi movies, do it in multiple scripts, not just Latin and Devanagari. So I think these are also great examples of ephemera from olden times, which also translate into more newer and modern ways, which is you see multilingual road signs still in Delhi in a lot of places, which is also, I think, again, like all these pictures that I'm showing are kind of sources of inspiration and learning in themselves. So like after that quick tour of sorts, I think like we come to digital fonts, which is what I work with, and probably all of you are here to learn more about. So the type foundry that was a more physical, analog kind of an experience is more digital now, and you have type foundries, different type foundries that have more online presence, and you can go license typefaces from their stores and then use them for whatever purpose you need to, which kind of lets us understand and evaluate the state of type in India today, which is to say, like, you saw all these pictures of things in and around us and also some historic ones, but then these digital fonts and how they translate in their use today is something that is of interest to me and kind of affects my work in a lot of ways. And that is a lot of times that when we are traveling, maybe in malls and things, you probably have seen these kind of bilingual signs where it's kind of like a legal rule that they have to put the local vernacular sign there. So they just like apparently just put something on there, and oftentimes not even transliterated correctly. Just I think it's paid so little attention somehow that it sometimes it does bother me. Like here, like I don't even know was what they were trying to do. Like there's no attention to even, like, forget about matching the styles. It's not even like written correctly. These things also, certain design decisions are made because of other material, like other reasons, like material, tool, and we see that the cost of material because of digital intervention has lowered significantly, which like most of the students have probably used these kind of DTP places a lot, where you see that you get things designed for 3,000 rupees in like 2 hours and things. So that kind of does also make design more of a not special kind of a profession. It becomes more like a in the public domain, so anybody can design and like sell products. Also, the cost of material of not just designing, but the material, the paper and flex printing that happens, causes so it to replace all these store signs, which were usually like done in these hand painted styles, but they took time and and money. So like nowadays are replaced by these flex printouts, which are like 10 or 12 rupees a meter, square meter or something. And I think they've become like so cheap that you just see flex banners for everything. This was from last year. This is, I think, this people wishing them a happy birthday or something. Another big issue that I see around is the Latinization of script, which is because most communication happens probably like with branding and things happens with Latin. And then whenever there is a need for Devanagari, it kind of, a lot of times things are just copy pasted from one script to the other. Whereas that should not be the case, because both scripts have their own identity and they behave completely differently. And it, to me, is really appalling when you try and like just take one script and force its characters onto another one. This is like exactly an example of what I'm trying to talk about. There's no capital, so they've just like tried to make the first syllable bigger in these things. And this, you see this in a lot of recent, like newer examples too. In this case, the social chain, where they've paid so much attention to a lot of details in design, but when it comes to the Devanagari logo, it's not even a stencil. It's just like like a default Adobe Devanagari that they used and just put some stencil kind of cutout somewhere and just made to do, where this was an opportunity for design intervention and create a Devanagari stencil type that could actually work well with the Latin as well. Another thing that we've seen over and over again is cultural appropriation. This got sent to me by a cousin from the US and for one, I thought like it reads Asia, but then it reads India, but then like somebody pointed out to me that it reads Asia. So I guess they're trying to incorporate some Thai influences and Indian, and it's just like a hot mess. So yeah, you probably also, people who are outside of India probably know Indian restaurants from this one typeface that is just used everywhere. Another more practical reasons why we find these kind of discrepancies is that Indian scripts are not the most easiest to render on screen and to like input. You need to know certain InDesign tools to make sure that that your script is rendering correctly. Otherwise, it causes mishaps like these, which I feel terrible about this person who got this tattooed on his body. Um, or in cases of, this is from a flight where you can see the oo matra just floating around and it's actually supposed to attach. But this is even like this is not some private person who doesn't know how to use this. This should have required a designer know that this is not an appropriate way of rendering the script. Another part of understanding is these open source licenses, a lot of which a lot of people commonly also know as like free fonts, but they're not technically free. It's a different license. So, for example, Google Fonts is an example of open source fonts, which you can download and use in your websites or whatever work. You probably know, you probably used Google Fonts as students. Or so, to give you an example, this is a typeface called Baloo by Type, and you can see the number of people. I was trying to see that there's a huge number of people who are using the font, and that made me think about if these typefaces, that the huge numbers, do they translate in qualitative design decisions, or is this just because it seems free and that is why they're getting used and downloaded so much? And that kind of was I could tell that the qualitative part is probably not as much, because this is the same font Baloo that is being used by this news channel for a crime series something. So like I would never imagine Baloo to be used for something that was remotely related to crime. So yeah, these are just things that I'm prompting in a way to like think about and like understand that kind of would influence design process as well. And lastly, I think like because we live in India, are we have a completely different set of hierarchy of problems. I think somebody's audio is on. Can you please switch that off? Thank you. Yes. So speaking of hierarchy of problems, like if you're one of these people standing on this platform trying to get into this train, I don't think what's on your mind is, oh, is the bitmap font on the front of the train rendering correctly, or is it like nicely designed, So you just want to get into it and go home. So I think it's important to understand that India is a very different demographic, and we cannot apply the same design standards as international standards, and you have to really look at our context and figure out what works and how it can work for us here. So it might seem like there are a lot of problems that I explained, but there's also a lot of hope. In the past decade or so, there have been a lot of new type foundries in India that are trying to design new and improved Unicode typefaces that are more standardized and have a lot more features and can work on several platforms, etc. So that there are new typefaces for newer typography that we need now. Also, the technological advancements have been massively larger, so they open up very many new possibilities of designing typefaces in Indian scripts. So I think it's really, I find it a very exciting time to be a type designer in this time. which leads to like the technological development, like with fonts and software and support. Glyphs app is my tool of choice, and I use Glyphs to create my Devanagari typefaces. Just a little note on this: they have a lot of tutorials and forums and everything. Every question that you probably have in the first few weeks of designing a typeface have already been answered. So if you're into designing, you should definitely look this up. And we also made a tutorial on creating a Devanagari font, so you can look that up too if you're interested in drawing Devanagari typefaces. All this has led to a lot of these new type foundries that I spoke about are creating new typefaces like Type, which is based in Mumbai. They have created a lot of multi-script families which cater to a coherent uh, design language through multiple scripts from India. I think it's really great. Um, a lot of revival typefaces can be designed now. This is also Jaini by Type. So if you remember one of the manuscript pictures that I showed earlier, this is the same similar style. So they designed the typeface in the same style. So the possibilities are truly endless. There can be typefaces that are inspired from popular culture. So this is again taking these hand-painted signs into a more digital platform. This is project handpaintedtype.com, which used these typeface like lettering styles of painters and then digitized them into typefaces that you can use online. This I would like to steer this now into a little more about my work, and I would like to show you some of my projects that I've worked on. So handwritten typefaces was this came to me. This was a custom project called Sharad 76. This is a project that I designed for a, an ad agency based in Pune called Setu Advertising. Sharad is a typeface that is very special to me, and it's based on the handwriting of this copy writer from Pune called Mr. Sharad Deshpande, who sadly no more, but he suffered a paralytic attack and lost the ability to write. And so his sons, on the occasion of his 75th birthday, decided to make a typeface out from his handwriting because he was a copywriter. He had books and books of notes of his beautiful handwriting. And when I heard that, I thought like that was such a nice gesture, and I decided to take up the project. What made it special was also this like beautiful gesture that these had, and also when I looked up handwritten typefaces in Devanagari, I figured that there weren't very many that did justice to the concept of handwriting, which so a little bit about the process was that because they had so much written material already, I scanned through a lot of them and kind of marked certain peculiar shapes that I could that were repeating or that seemed like most peculiar to his handwriting. So the thing about handwriting is that no two shapes are exactly the same. Whereas in typefaces, if you see like the concept of a typeface is that the system always remains same. But again, with current technological like changes, you can have 4 different variations called as alternates of the same letter, and kind of write a feature code so that they can randomly appear as you type your text. So it kind of gives you this texture and feel of a more handwritten kind of style. So here you can see like so in Sharad, there's like 4 different alternates of each main consonant letter. And the output is kind of like, you can see that so that's the scan and that's the typeface that eventually turned out. So it tries to go as close as possible to his handwriting by introducing these different alternates and styles. While designing Sharad, I used to get all these different ideas of what all can be done with handwritten typefaces. But because this was a custom project and I was kind of confined to his handwriting, I couldn't like take the liberty and do other things, which is when I decided to draw Maku, which is also a handwritten stylized typeface based on my own handwritten styles. So I just began sketching and drawing different letters, and which included just like endless options of different vowels and conjuncts. And this is when I got the idea of maybe drawing these swash characters, which you see a lot in hand painted like signboards around. But there's not many type. There's actually no other typeface that actually does this kind of swash characters for Devanagari. Um, and it's already in, like, it's you can there are swash characters in a lot of Latin typefaces where you just have to in InDesign toggle a button and you can uh, kind of have these working. So I thought, like, why not in Devanagari? And while I was drawing this, I also decided to draw a lot of icons which were more Indian inspired. I thought, like, you have so many dingbats and emojis that people use nowadays, but there's not many very Indian specific. So I decided they mostly were themed on festivals and things. So I started drawing a lot of these as well. So I began with drawing the Devanagari first because that came more naturally to this particular handwritten style, and then slowly also drew a Latin to accompany the Devanagari. So little note about the process of how this went was, like, I drew this on with hand on paper, and then they were scanned and traced in glyphs. So you can see that it's a rough style still because it is handwritten. It's not very clean, and that was intentional. Glyphs also offers a lot many ways in which you can, again, get your script to render correctly. So this is called marked positioning, wherein you can place anchors so that your top and bottom matras can stay in the position that they should be. There are certain features like this one where you can have, like, I won't talk too much about the features. If you have any specific questions, maybe we can address them later. But this is basically what glyphs enables you to do, is that you know that when you type this combination, it should give you this conjunct letter. Just to show you, this is how the glyphs window looks like, and this is like a back end where you can see that there's like all these features here, and they kind of get updated and compiled, and then that makes the font a workable, like, usable typeface. So yeah, like, Maku currently has Latin, Devanagari, Greek, and Cyrillic, and that is a giant character set of some 3,600 glyphs. And recently I added a bold weight as well, so there is a regular and bold, and you can see all these different. This is basically the entire character set of the font. This is what it looks like. So these are the alternates that I explained for each letter. This is how the swash characters look like. These are some of the dingbats. And this was a short movie that we made that just, you know, yeah. So that was just a small movie we made to showcase all the features of Maku. The next project I want to show is a more recent typeface called Chicky. This is also a Devanagari and Latin typeface, which basically has the unique thing about this is that it doesn't have any curved strokes in it. It's all built with straight lines, but in smaller size, it kind of still gives the illusion that uh, you can't tell that it is not made with any curved lines at all. So that's how that looks. And I'd like to talk about variable fonts in this case, which is the latest thing in font formats, which basically allows you to pick. So what you can see right now is like a variable weight axis. So basically you have, instead of having your usual standard like light, regular, bold, semi-bold, black weights, what this axis allows you to do is like pick your own sort of weight. So if you were working on something and you thought that maybe this bold is too bold and I would like it to be a little less, so this would would be massively in use on websites and these kind of cases where you can just note your own number and then put that particular weight, and then you can use these kind of, and these axes can be, right now Chiki has only a weight axis, but there can be an angle like italic axis with respect to Latin. There are also serif to sans serif axis. This is the latest thing, so if you want to know more about it, I suggest that you look up more about variable fonts. Another thing that I thought could be applicable with variable fonts is that these stacked conjuncts, I thought like could get more compact with certain weight. So you can see that it kind of, the open loops kind of close up and it kind of accounts to more uh, space saving and like more legibility for the bolder weights. Another kind of newer technology is color fonts, which allows you to have colors, pre-decided colors in your fonts as well. So while I was drawing Chiki, a lot of times when you're drawing typefaces, it can get a little monotonous to just keep staring at the same kind of letter forms over and over again. So usually I kind of step away and start drawing something different just to have some fun. And while drawing Chiki, I thought like, why not maybe draw this beveled? Actually made a hand sketch of it, and I thought like, let me see how it looks with a color font, like a monochrome shadow 3D kind of a thing. And I got really excited and I made the basic character set, which I thought was okay, like this could look really good and I could keep continuing with this. But then I remembered that there were 6 layers in each of these letters. So to create all those effects, it's 6 layers and there's around 1700 something glyphs in this font. So that would mean like making those many layers. So then I stopped and I went back to drawing Chiki. So this every time I have some downtime from other projects, I do kind of go back and add a few layers. So hopefully it will be complete at some point. And yeah, so I think like that's just my hopeful inspiration for what could come from this color Chiki font. Um, the just I would like to show some sneak peek of some upcoming work that I'll be releasing soon. I've been working on the Gurmukhi style for Chiki. I actually participated in this 35 days of Gurmukhi challenge on Instagram and started drawing Gurmukhi because that's something I always wanted to learn. So I started preparing to learn the script and look at the letter proportions beforehand, and then started adding one character for this challenge. And now it's close to completing with the typeface. Also, every time I design a typeface, I also like to add some very script specific or style specific things to it. So Chiki Gurmukhi has a lot of these Fulkari inspired patterns, which I think are quite fun and also very pertinent to Gurmukhi and Punjabi, as culturally they kind of fit and would be nice. This is my latest typeface. If you follow me on Instagram, you've probably seen snippets of this. I don't have a name for this one yet. sometimes naming can be quite taxing a job. So that's what it looks like. And what I'm trying to do is my idea was like, how condensed can this go and still be legible and usable sort of a approach. So this is where I finally settled that. And I started with the Devanagari. That's, I think, even though I use English as a language more often in terms of my communication, when it comes to designing, I'm most comfortable starting with Devanagari. That comes most naturally to me. So I started drawing the Devanagari first. And I'm trying to do is also taking some inspiration from these Jainese style, where you can see the vertically stacked conjuncts kind of fit in the kana height of certain letter forms. So that's something that's kind of new that I'm trying out. Let's see. So when you design a typeface, it's not just the letters, there's also accented letters and numbers, fractions, punctuations, currency symbols, and of course, icons. This is just to show you, again, like the node placement of how these things work in the font software. I've made these using a really cool plugin called Presenter Pro. So that's the Latin.
Kimya, sorry to interrupt. We have just 15 minutes, and we have to take questions also. So
Okay, I'm just almost ending. This was my last project, so just like a minute more. Okay.
yeah, please.
All right. So yeah, see, this slide is, I made this because of Saurabh and because a lot of people I think joining are from SPA, and I heard about Laurie Baker from Saurabh and his uh, final year project. So I thought this is shout out to you, Saurabh. Also, I'm designing some objects that go with the condensed typeface as well. And this is again going to be a variable font. So just showing, and in this one, I'm also trying to, this is along with the weight, also trying to figure out an italic axis. So this will also have an italic axis to this. So just concluding thoughts, I wanted to say that as designers, this time that we're sitting in lockdown and things is just making me think about what we need to do. And I think I've always believed in like understanding what it means to be a designer in India, or like an Indian designer, which also, yeah. So also another like last part I would like to talk about just a little bit about design education, which I feel is very important. When I was studying, I studied mostly graphic design in Latin context and Latin typography. And so when I teach, I try and make sure that there is some aspect of contextual design and understanding the environment that we live in. Well, I've always believed in collaborating and meeting people around, well, not right now, virtually for now. And once this is done, I'm looking forward to seeing many more of these faces. I think it's important to also collect and archive things around you, because we are living in such times where things change so much that all these hand-painted things will probably be gone, and then you won't have a reference. So when you go out, you see something, click pictures and try and learn from them. Another thing I believe in is to create work for yourself. It might be scary at first, but it grows on eventually. And once you figure that out, you don't worry about smaller things, I think. And finally, I'd like to end by saying, use your voice. I know that as graphic designers and type designers, I know we're not saving lives, we're no essential workers, but I think that we are responsible, however, for creating the visual landscape of the future. So I think we do have a responsibility there, and to use that wisely. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Kimya. And I think through your presentation, you covered like a lot of points, like history of type, especially in India, and then everyday typography, and then technicalities, and then nuances of particular scripts, and then also the most importantly, the cultural aspects and why we need certain specific design, contextual design for our own environments. I'm like, there's no doubt about that kind of demography that we deal with. Now I open the floor for the questions, and some of the questions which were asked in the form have already been answered by you. I think,
Hmm.
there's no need to cover them again. Uh, Akshaya, Akshaya Gandhi, I mean, she's asking, explain the process of designing multilingual type. I'm like,
I think that's a I don't think that's a one-line answer
I think
question,
that's a
but
that's that's a course.
yeah, that's a, and also I think it's not, I would like to say when I showed a lot of these multilingual language like typeface projects, it's not one person sitting and designing all the scripts. It's usually a team of designers, mostly people who are acquainted with a particular script, then they have some kind of sensibility to draw these, or people who have studied it or taken the effort to understand how the script works. And then there's of course a back and forth with readers. So you design. So for example, when I was designing the Gurmukhi, I'm not native to Punjabi, reading it or speaking it. So I had a few, like I was always showing it to people who can read it and a friend, and not just like it also. I always like to show it to different age groups. So I had a friend who was showing it to his parents as well, because you get different responses from people who are from different age groups who are used to seeing a script in certain ways. So yeah, I think designing multilingual is a huge, long process. But I think this is where collaboration comes into play, and a lot of people come together and then design bigger families.
Right. Amit Pat Joshi, who is also a very passionate calligrapher, he wants to know that how different is to do kerning pairs in Devanagari than in Latin typefaces.
Well, kerning is a very Latin specific terminology where you adjust spaces between particular letters. I think in Devanagari, I don't think it's like any different. It's just that it's not set up in the same way because the Devanagari letter forms are completely different. And so, like, I wouldn't call it kerning. It usually, I would just say spacing letter forms. But I think if you're talking about the intent of how you are doing, then there's no difference. Like if it's basically spacing letter forms and creating more even texture, so that
Right.
is not any different. But
So
yeah.
my question would be like, is there a kind of equivalent, not necessarily equivalent, but perhaps like, Devanagari has its own conditions. So could you just illustrate some
But
of the
like
Devanagari
in
there?
Latin, like for example, you have like common kerning pairs like the A and V. So I don't think that kind of directly applies to Devanagari. It also depends on design. So if you see like the condensed one that I showed, like compare that to like Chiki or something, they are completely different shapes. So the way they will sit next to each other will also be different. So it depends on each individual design, I think.
Right, right. Shanu is complimenting you, great work. And then Dhara wants to know what about your other work, designing of wedding cards, where so much of the printing process have been explored.
Hi, Dara. Uh, so yeah, I think this talk was mostly about my type work, so which is why I just mostly spoke about that. But yeah, I do design uh, wedding cards, and I think it again. This is that stems from you just keep staring into the computer all the time, and then you want to do something that's more tactile. So I enjoy exploring different printing processes, which kind of happened through designing wedding cards, which one of which is Dhara. So yes.
Uh, okay. Parth wants to know when we think of an idea for a type, it usually come out one character that we sketch that inspire us. How do we
Mhm.
take characteristics from it, from one particular letter, I think, and then apply it for all the alphabets and create proper system to it? Basically, from from a small to the largest system. That's I
Mhm.
think.
Yeah, so yeah, that's actually one of the initial processes of starting to design a typeface as a system. So typeface is, like certain letters that fit together and work together as a whole system. So I think what I usually do is like even proportionally and anatomically, you have certain letter forms that share certain characteristics. So, for example, like the k, v, and b, if I give an example, so they have certain structural similarities. So, I think when if you're starting from a k, maybe that can give you some clues for the v. So I think when you start from one letter that still has enough information in it that can influence the other characters, so you can look at that one letter and then understand, oh, how are the curved strokes in it, and how what is the proportion in it, and then take that information and expand it to the other characters and use that to slowly grow your character set.
Right. So Nupur wants to know, can you suggest something? I think there's some issue here. Yeah,
Hello.
yeah, Kimya. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Nupur wants to know, can you suggest something for a beginner in type design? How to start? What should be in the starting steps?
Wow, that's again like I don't think like I don't know how I can define something, but I think it would be first to like maybe decide if you want to draw a what which script typeface you want to draw. If you are wanting to start off with a Latin typeface, there's enough and more resources online, so you should be totally covered. I think if you just Google typefaces, there's books, there's all sorts of information. If you want to design an Indian script, there's comparatively less educational material information available, but there is still some. So I think there is actually, we have on our Mota Italic page, there is a design resources page that you can look up, and that has a lot of resources that can help you understand, like, there are book references, there are also website references that may help you when you're starting off with type design.
Okay. Shahana Deepak, I think, who is also our student from Landscape, she's complimenting you, and then she's wondering if typefaces have been explored to revive the weaving techniques in India, or perhaps other art forms
Mm.
also, using wavy strokes as guiding lines for the typeface in this particular thing.
Not that I know about. There actually was a typeface project that was done by Ishan Khosla, which is not weaving, but it is kind of exploring the Gonna tribal art forms.
Right.
So, but that's not weaving. It's not being done. So you can do that, I guess.
Yeah. Shahana, take admission in MDes. Srinivas wants to know what was your inspiration for type travel?
Oh, I love traveling and I like looking at letter forms. So I think it's like the best of both worlds combined. I don't think like,
I think it was also one of the courses which you did with Professor Nina Sabrani, visual ethnography. I mean,
yeah.
it fitted in that
Yeah,
particular.
maybe, yeah, I think so. And I think like once you go and you see all these things, like when you go to different states and you see this, diversity, then it just like there is no other way than get inspired by it. So I think it's quite addictive once you do it. Then you want to like see more and look at more things. So yeah.
So Amisha, an IDC grad, she's thanking you, and then Amal Krishna is also saying thank you, and then Reva Saxena, who is a student of third year of BArch of SP Bhopal. Ma'am, how do you think it's possible to spread awareness and better appreciate typefaces? She's an architecture student because it seems to be nuanced form of art, and only with awareness would people adopt these fonts and help build a future for designers in India. Very, very interesting and refreshing presentation, ma'am.
Uh, I think like I think the way I try to spread awareness is by doing this. I guess like this is just my way of talking about it. I also believe like design education is very important in this aspect because uh, these design like the design students are going to be design practitioners, and that is when they need to be informed and educated about contextual design and understanding qualitative sensitivity towards form. So I think when that happens in college and when you're introduced to that, then you can hope that these people become like, when they're practicing design in the real world, then they take those influences and use them. So
Right. So Ganesh is again thanking you for the presentation, and just one small question he's asking: since you told that there are so many languages that are slowly disappearing, but and also the scripts, is there a collective that is taking responsibility to revive those languages and hence keep alive all the typefaces related to it? I can perhaps add to it one of your contemporaries, Kimya, who is our student at MDes, Jayant, who is also in the talk right now. He worked on Teruta script. So I think,
Mm.
working on Teruta also connected him to the larger Teruta research. And it's very important for typographer and type designers to align and to also locate themselves within the larger, landscape of research, I believe.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think like when I said that meet people, I think that doesn't, I mean like meet, it also means like meeting linguists and other people. So there have been, I think, there's no one particular collective that's like working on reviving languages, but like you explained, yes, like Jayant who's working on Tiruta also, who I think there have been like a lot of attempts in different parts of the country where certain communities are reviving certain. So there was a project for Tulu, even Miti Mek, which is from Manipur, which was a couple decades ago not so much in use, but they have kind of revived that again and teaching that in schools. So there have been, I think it depends on the Noto project, which is also Google Noto project, which was basically to support all scripts of the world. So I did work on a few of scripts from India, which like called Saurashtra and things like people we like I hadn't even heard about. And there are so through that I got to know that there are some professors or some people who are running a blog and trying to spread awareness about it. So there are like more indigenous, smaller projects that are happening, but yeah, so there is.
So we'll take one last question by Kalpesh Bhausa, who is the first year student of MDes at SPA Bhopal. Can you talk about different type licenses? How do we make sure that we don't get into any copyright infringement?
Okay, I think a lot of these questions are like I think talks in itself. So uh, I won't get into too much of detail about type licenses, but I think that the main difference is like the commercial licenses, which means that you're using a typeface in a product that you are going to sell or monetarily benefit out of. So, that can be different applications, like suppose it's branding. So you're using my typeface for your brand, which again, which is a commercial part of it. So there are, if you go to any type foundry that I mentioned in the presentation, you go on their website, you can see in the buying section, each type foundry deals with different kinds of licenses. So, and now you'll see licenses for website, for application, for e-publications. So whatever be your particular need, you'll find a license based on that. So yeah.
Right. So now we come towards the end. Thanks a lot, Kimya. And
Yeah.
thanks
Thank
for
you.
so promptly agreeing to it. I messaged Kimya, I think around 3 a.m. in the night, and she was also surprisingly awake. All our body clocks are really gone haywire these days.
Mm.
Please visit our website, that is design.spab.ac.in. And the next public design Samvād is going to be by Abhishek Singh. He's a well-known artist. If you've not heard about him, just Wikipedia him. He's also on Wikipedia. So Abhishek
All right.
Singh, draws a lot of mythological paintings and all. We are going to have his session on Tuesday, 2 to 3 p.m. Tuesday, that is 19th May. And soon we'll release a registration form on our website. So thanks for joining us, people from all
Thank
over
you.
India. Thanks over.
Uh, I
I'm
just wanted to say that if people had more questions or something, they can, like, if they did not get answered, then they can
right,
write to me
right.
and like address their questions.
Yes, and you can find Kimya's work on the. You just have to Google Kimya with the right spelling, I believe. And
Yes.
now just for the gratitude, I request everyone to open their mics and cameras and say bye bye and thank you.
Well, thank you for arranging this, Saurabh. This is quite.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.